They treated me as if I were invisible, as if my existence was nothing more than an inconvenience. No matter how well I did in school, no matter how hard I tried to please them, I was always the outcast, the one left behind, the one unwanted. But the cruelest blow came the day I discovered the truth. I wasn't their real child. In a single moment, the home I thought was mine crumbled, and I was cast out with nothing but the clothes on my back. I thought my life had ended, but it hadn't. It had only begun. 15 years later, when they came back, desperate and begging for help, I finally had the power to give them exactly what they once gave me: rejection. My name is Clara Bennett. From the very beginning, I knew where I stood in my family's eyes, or rather, where I didn't. Our home was filled with praise and affection, but none of it ever reached me. My older brother, Lucas, was the golden boy. Handsome, confident, effortlessly talented, he could do no wrong. My sister, Diana, was the shining star, praised for her beauty and charm. And then there was me, the shadow, the one who blended into the background, whose achievements never seemed to matter. If Lucas brought home a decent grade, he was celebrated. If Diana smiled sweetly, she was adored. But if I earned straight A's or worked twice as hard, the silence was deafening. The only person who ever saw me, truly saw me, was my grandmother, Grace. She was gentle yet sharp, with silver hair tied back neatly and a voice that carried both kindness and authority. She would cup my face in her hands and whisper, "Clara, you are special. You just don't know it yet." Those words became my anchor in a world that otherwise treated me like I was invisible. Our house itself seemed to echo the imbalance. At the dinner table, my parents leaned toward Lucas and Diana, asking about their dreams, their friends, their futures. I sat quietly, listening, hoping for someone to ask about mine. They never did. When birthdays came around, Lucas got the latest gadgets, Diana the prettiest dresses. I got something practical, usually wrapped with little thought, as though checking me off a list. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. As a child, I believed maybe it was my fault. Maybe if I worked harder, studied longer, smiled brighter, I could earn their love. I clung to every chance to prove myself, desperate for recognition that never came. The distance between us grew like a wall I could never climb. Still, I carried myself with quiet dignity. I learned to find comfort in books, in long walks alone, and in the evenings I spent with Grandma Grace. She was the only one who reminded me that I mattered, the only one who planted a seed of hope inside me. I didn't know then that everything I believed about myself and my family was about to shatter. The truth of who I really was would come crashing down like a storm, and the rejection I had felt all my life would turn into something far more devastating. I was 22 when my world collapsed. Grandma Grace, the only person who ever made me feel wanted, passed away quietly one spring morning. I remember standing by her bedside, clutching her frail hand, whispering, "Don't leave me, please." But she slipped away with a soft smile, as if she knew something I didn't. At the reading of her will, my parents and siblings received generous portions of her estate, money, property, even the family heirlooms that had decorated our home for generations. When it came to me, everyone seemed almost surprised to hear my name mentioned. The lawyer cleared his throat and handed me a small box. Inside lay a sapphire necklace, its stone deep and blue like an endless ocean. Beside it was an envelope sealed with Grandma's handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened the letter. Her words poured out like a confession. "Clara, my dearest, you were never told the truth. You are not your parents' biological child. They took you in when you were just a baby. But to me, you were always mine, my granddaughter in every way that mattered." I felt the ground beneath me vanish. The silence in the room grew heavy as I read aloud the truth. My mother averted her eyes. My father's face twisted, red with rage. Before I could even process the shock, he stood and shouted, his voice booming like thunder. "So now you know. You were never one of us. You don't belong here, Clara, you never did. Get out. His words cut deeper than any blade. I looked at Lucas and Diana, hoping for even the faintest sign of protest, a flicker of compassion, but their eyes were cold, almost relieved. To them, I had always been the outsider. Now the secret gave them permission to erase me completely. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't beg. I didn't scream. With shaking hands, I clutched the sapphire necklace against my chest, grabbed the envelope, and walked away. My father's final command, "Don't ever come back," echoed behind me, sealing my exile. By nightfall, I stood alone on the city streets, rain pouring down in sheets that soaked me to the bone. I had nothing but $4,000 Grandma had tucked inside the envelope, the necklace, and the clothes on my back. Every step felt heavier than the last, my shoes squelching in the puddles as neon lights blurred around me. For a moment, I thought my life had ended right there. Abandoned. Betrayed. A stranger to the very family I had spent my whole life trying to please. But somewhere, deep inside that storm of grief, a seed of defiance stirred. If they had cast me out like I was nothing, then I would become something they could never ignore. That night, in the freezing rain, I swore to myself, this would not be the end. It would be the beginning. Seattle became my refuge, or maybe my battlefield. I arrived there with a suitcase half empty and a heart entirely broken. I knew no one, had no connections, and carried nothing but the $4,000 Grandma had left me. It vanished quickly, rent, food, bus fares. By the end of the second month, I was counting pennies in my pocket, terrified of running out. So I took whatever work I could find. I washed dishes until my hands cracked from the hot water and chemicals. I waited tables, smiling through exhaustion while customers snapped their fingers at me like I was invisible. And when those shifts ended, I sat in public libraries, glued to second-hand laptops, teaching myself everything I could about coding and cybersecurity. At first, it was survival. A way to earn a few freelance gigs online, enough to scrape by. But the deeper I went, the more it consumed me. Lines of code became my escape, my weapon, my secret world where I mattered. Unlike my family's house, where I had always been unwanted, here, in this digital battlefield, I could build something of my own. I devoured textbooks, online courses, tutorials at 3 in the morning. My fingers flew across keyboards until they bled. And with every skill mastered, I felt a small spark of power ignite inside me. The world had cast me out, but the internet didn't care about my last name, or whether I belonged. It only cared if I was good enough. And I was. By 26, I had saved enough to rent a cramped office space above a laundromat. I called it Cyber Shield. Just a name on a door, really, but to me it was more than that. It was a promise that I would never again be powerless, that I would turn pain into strength. The early days were brutal. No one believed a young woman with no pedigree, no backing, no family name could protect multinational corporations from hackers. But I proved them wrong, one contract at a time. I slept under my desk more nights than I can count, running simulations, patching vulnerabilities, pulling all-nighters while others doubted. And slowly, the tide shifted. Cyber Shield gained clients, then contracts, then recognition. By the time I was 32, the company had grown into a billion-dollar powerhouse. I employed hundreds, maybe thousands. But they weren't just employees to me. They became my real family, engineers, analysts, dreamers who knew what it meant to be overlooked, dismissed, underestimated. Together, we built something indestructible. Yet for all the success, all the power, there remained a scar I couldn't ignore. My family, the ones who had discarded me like trash, still haunted my thoughts. I never reached out, never visited. But in quiet moments, I wondered, what would I do if they came back into my life? Would I forgive them? Or would I make them feel every ounce of the pain they had once inflicted on me? The answer, though buried, was already forming inside me. It was a Tuesday morning when the past came walking into my empire. My assistant buzzed me, her voice tight with unease. Clara, there are two visitors here. They say their names are Lucas and Diana Bennett. They claim it's urgent. For a heartbeat, my blood turned cold. Lucas, Diana, the golden children of my childhood. The ones who had mocked me, pushed me aside, and watched as I was cast into the rain. After all these years, they were here. I told my assistant to let them in. The moment they entered my office, I knew. Life had not been kind to them. Lucas's once polished confidence was now a brittle shell. Diana's eyes darted around, searching for cracks of hope in the polished glass walls and sleek steel of CyberShield's headquarters. They looked small, desperate, and most satisfying of all, they didn't recognize me. To them, I was just Ms. Bennett, the elusive founder of a billion-dollar empire. They began talking over each other, spinning tales of their downfall. The family business had collapsed. Debts were piling high. Investors had fled. They needed help. They needed rescue. Their voices trembled as they tried to appeal to what they thought was my generosity, promising repayment, partnerships, anything to keep their drowning legacy afloat. I listened in silence, hands folded neatly on the table, my expression unreadable. When their words finally faltered into silence, I leaned back and pressed a small button on my desk. My assistant entered, placing a folder before them. Inside was a photocopy of Grandma Grace's letter, the one that revealed I wasn't their blood, the one they had used as a weapon to cast me out. Alongside it was a USB drive. "Go ahead," I said coolly. "Play it." The room filled with the venom of the past, my father's voice roaring, "You don't belong here. Get out." And the silence of Lucas and Diana, who had done nothing but smirk as I was discarded. I watched their faces drain of color. Recognition flickered, then horror, then shame. For the first time, they saw me, not as the invisible girl in the corner, but as the woman who had risen from the ashes of their cruelty. I let the silence linger, savoring their discomfort. Then I spoke. "Family is not something you bargain with. You remember me now only because you are desperate. But I remember every night I cried alone in the dark, wishing you had seen me." Their lips parted, searching for words, but I cut them off. "You will get no money from me. No salvation." Instead, I paused, letting the weight of my decision sink in. I am creating the Grace Foundation, named after the only person who ever loved me. It will serve children who were abandoned, just like I was. And the world will know, I have no blood family. Only the family I chose. Within a week, the press covered the story. Headlines blazed across every outlet. CyberShield founder disowns family, builds empire for orphans. Lucas and Diana couldn't escape it. The same society that once admired them now pitted them, or worse, despised them. Their empire was gone. Their pride shattered. And they would never again forget the girl they had tried to erase. The press conference was supposed to be routine, an announcement of the Grace Foundation, a celebration of the future. But for Lucas and Diana, it became the funeral of their reputation. Cameras flashed. Reporters jostled for questions. And there they were, standing just outside the spotlight, pale and rigid, forced to watch as I told the world my story. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply laid out the truth. How a girl once cast aside, told she was nothing, had built an empire from the ashes. How the only family I ever had shut their doors on me, and how that rejection became my fire. And finally, how I chose to honor the woman who had once saved me with kindness, my grandmother, Grace. The room went silent when I said, "Blood means nothing if the heart is empty. I have no family by birth, only the family I choose." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras zoomed in on Lucas and Diana, their faces frozen in shock, humiliation burning into every corner of their expression. It was not my voice that destroyed them. It was the truth itself. Truth, displayed so publicly, left them with nowhere to hide. Their fall was complete. The empire their father had built was already gone. And now their last currency, their name, their honor, was stripped bare. In the days that followed, news outlets devoured their story. Articles called them the heirs who lost everything. Social media mocked them without mercy. Former business partners abandoned them, eager to distance themselves from the disgrace. They became symbols of greed, arrogance, and downfall. And I felt no need to celebrate their ruin. Watching them crumble under the weight of their own choices was enough. I didn't need to raise my voice. Their silence said it all. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from the chains of their rejection, free from the shadow of a family that had never wanted me. The burden I had carried for decades, the desperate need for acknowledgement, finally dissolved. Now, my days are filled with something far greater. The Grace Foundation has grown into a sanctuary for thousands of abandoned children, children who, like me, once believed they had no place in the world. I walk into rooms filled with their laughter, their resilience, their hope, and I see myself in every one of them. I have learned that family is not always where you are born. Family is where your heart finds a home. Lucas and Diana live in the ruins of what they once took for granted. But I live in light, surrounded by the family I built, carrying forward the love of the only woman who ever believed in me. And that, in the end, is the truest revenge of all. My story was never just about revenge. It was about reclaiming the worth that had been denied to me. Revenge may silence the past, but true justice is found when you rise above it, when you build a life that no one can take away. Never let anyone tell you that you are small, invisible, or unworthy. Their rejection does not define you. Your resilience does. And if you've ever been betrayed, remember this. Your success, your peace, and your happiness are the strongest answers you can give. Tell me in the comments, what does justice in family mean to you? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more powerful stories of justice, revenge, and redemption.